panel today, Maggie Connick, who's an engineer. Also, Vivian Blick, who's Managing Director of Tango Group Limited. He's an inventor as well. And also with us in the studio today is Russell Foster, who's Professor of Neuroscience at the University of Oxford. Hello again to all of you. And we were talking about getting women interested in science just before the news at 11 o'clock. And Russell, you made the point, just as we went to the news, that one of your daughters is caught in this sort of dilemma between science and art as we speak.
Yeah, I mean, both of my daughters, my eldest, she's just very good at lots of different things. And so she did science A-levels. But her fourth was in fine art. And she thought, right, I'm going to concentrate, with my A2s on the sciences. Then realised after a month what she had really missed was this fine art. So she finished her A-levels, then did a foundation, is now just completing a degree in fine art. But what she's found in the process is that she wants some more rigour. So she's probably going to go on into medicine now. And in the way that we've sort of constructed our education system, it's fairly unforgiving. That jumping between disciplines isn't always easy. We're clearly able to support her, but many people don't have that luxury.
That's so true. I think the way we have to choose subjects in this country in the education system means you have to go down one route. And it's I remember I chose to do at A-level English, art, and biology, and I remember teachers looking at me with shock. Why are you doing those combination of subjects? That'll get you nowhere.
Yeah, but it's worse. Before you get to that level, when you're 14, you have to choose subjects. And the subjects, my grandson has to choose between history and geography. He wants to do both. And I think that there should be much more like the baccalaureate, I'm not very good at saying that, where they do a very general, and you were talking about a more liberal, I think there should be a much broader based...
I was based at the University of Virginia for 8 years, and there you have a liberal arts degree. Yeah. So you go in saying, well, I want to broadly do a degree in biology. But during that 4 years, you'll do humanities, and in fact, if you decide to shift, you can. Yeah. And so you get a greater breadth. Now, of course, the Americans need it because their A-levels are far less specialised. They don't have the equivalent. So that breadth is sort of accommodated within the universities. But I think we should be more flexible. Yeah, but you're 14, too young to make those decisions. At 14,
you're not developed enough to know exactly what route you're going to go, and you're going to be tramlined from then on into subjects. And you might miss out on science subjects or subjects that you will later find really, really interesting, and you don't get the opportunity to get back in.
Well, the only thing I ever won prizes for at school was art, and of course I had to drop art to do biology.
Yeah. and that's the thing as well. If you're sort of pushed down one route for those A-levels, those crucial A-levels, then those subjects are the key to getting into a university place, and it's a pity that you can't move those subjects around a bit.
But it's the whole issue of what's a degree for. We have a structure of a higher education which essentially imposes a degree. But I think as a nation, we've really addressed what do we want from our degrees? What are they actually for? And clearly, there's a whole spectrum of educational opportunities, from the very highly specialised academic to the much more applied. Should they all be called degrees, or do we go back to what I experienced, when I was growing up, the polytechnics and the more technical postgraduate and post-school endeavours.
Yeah, Vivian Blick, were you sure about what you wanted to, or the route that you wanted to go down when you were doing your O-levels, A-levels?
I was very fortunate. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. So by the time at age 16, I knew exactly I wanted to be an electronics engineer. I obtained an apprenticeship, which was, I was very lucky. I was right at the tail end before apprenticeships sort of faded away for a long time. And I knew where I was going. I actually did an apprenticeship with day release and did a HNC, which is like a higher technician's degree, or a diploma type award. And I did a master's degree much later at Sheffield Hallam when I was in my 30s. But I think the other problem we're facing, Chris, is that children or young people, they don't know what they want to do, certainly at 14, at 16, at 18. And what I'm hearing quite often now, children go to university because they don't know what else to do. They don't really know why they're going there, what their career path will be, but they don't know what else to do. So let's get a degree, at least that's something, which I think is slightly dangerous.
And is it important that the degree that you do has a bearing on what you decide to do as a career? I mean, my example, I did an arts degree and design degree, and I've ended up working on radio. So is that, do you think that's a problem?
The other thing we have to sort of, I think, take into account is that, so a biology degree, do you do a degree in biology because you're going to become a biologist. Well, a certain group of people will. But what a biology degree can provide is a very important way of thinking. What biologists do is integrate lots of information from different areas, come up with a synthesis, and that enables you to make a decision. Now, that's an extremely important life skill. Now, if you go, I think, so a biology degree is very well worth doing because it will teach you a way of tackling broader problems. And so, again, a degree in biology is very useful at a range of different levels, I think. And I think there are, I don't think we should say you're doing a degree because you want to do X. It's a breadth of education that I think is also very important.
Because the way things are going, you could almost see a penalty system in place, couldn't you? That if you don't go into the profession of the subject you've studied, you might have to pay penalties.
I don't know. University is probably an eye opener for you, but I didn't even do A levels. I mean, come 16, I was at a high school where you either became a secretary, a teacher, a nurse. You weren't open to any other opportunities. I mean, I know now I'd love to have gone into the media, but I never got that opportunity, and I always wanted to be an engineer. That was all that was ever there, and the doors weren't opening. And I did a secretarial training, and I mean, it's great now for computers. I can touch type, but I mean, it got me travelling. I mean, for a few years I travelled, and shorthand typing was great for that. But apart from that, I had to get into engineering by the back door and learn the hard way. And I've done it. I mean, I listened and I learnt and I watched people, and that's a great way to learn. Is just by watching people and asking questions, and I became a bit of an expert on Villiers carburettors, and it was just because I was interested, and that's how it is.
Yesterday at the Cheltenham Science Festival, a bunch of engineering apprenticeships sponsored by GE came through, and this is an extraordinary programme. I hadn't really been aware of what GE are actually doing in terms of apprenticeships, and we never hear about it.
No.
And here were a group of young people who were doing exactly what they wanted to do in a discipline that will feed something back very much to the country and provide them with a job. And I thought this was extraordinary. I was very impressed.
I would have loved that.
Yeah, and I was talking to these young individuals, and they were saying, well, why aren't more people doing it? And they said two things. Well, one, our teachers don't really know too much about it, but that's changing. And also, because it's a bit new, our parents don't know whether this is the sort of thing we should be doing. And so I think we've got to also engage the teachers and also the parents more in this diversity.
Well, the Army are doing a bit of that as well. And there are various things. I was saying just now, I would love to see much more of sponsored university places where people work in engineering or whatever system it is, but that they get sponsored so that they're doing some work within the subject. They're actually going to university with some help and coming out with a really balanced education.
Well, interesting. I mean, because Vivian, you're in industry, you run a company. Is an apprenticeship something you offer, or is it something you would like to offer?
We'd like to offer it, but I mean, the size of our business and the way that we're structured, particularly with all of our manufacturing in the Far East, is not practical. But the value of apprenticeships is, I don't think, can be stressed enough. We've had this great loss of apprenticeships, which is really an opening for creative, inventive, engineering type people that may not be quite the pure academic, but they're bright and they're hands-on and they want to learn, they're enthusiastic. And I think apprenticeships are ideal for that. We'd love to be able to offer them, but I don't think it's really practical for the shape of our business.
What would you need? I mean, because I think you're a classic example of the sort of person that should be offering an apprenticeship. What would you like government to actually enable you to offer some apprenticeships?
Well, there's several. It goes on several levels. I mean, first of all, we don't have a manufacturing base in the UK, so there's not a facility. When I did my apprenticeship, I spent 4 days a week in an industrial environment, learnt the hand skills as well as the academic skills. So we've got that bit missing for us, unfortunately.
And have you moved out of the UK because we can't do it here, or because it's much cheaper to do elsewhere?
You
can't do it in the UK. You cannot.
But why? Because we should be able to.
There's no investment. There's no investment. There's no encouragement.
Exactly.
There has not been any encouragement by the government, both from a taxation point of view, for research and development. Only some very minimal support now for R&D work in the UK. No incentives beyond the Development Agency grants years ago, which they've dried up. There's no encouragement to do it in the UK, and we're just not set up as a manufacturing base anymore in the UK. We're just not. And when you look to the Far East, they've invested, they've taken a long-term view, and it's paid off. You've got the likes of China, which are battling to keep their growth under control.
Do you think we could reverse it? Do you think that now is the time to think, right, we've really got to take a hold and start this again?
Well, where it starts is the education of the children leaving school, and you go back to introducing apprenticeships, which you've got chicken and egg. You can't train the school leavers because you don't have the facilities, but you won't get the facilities unless you invest in the future and the children.
I mean, you've got Dyson who've gone to Malaysia.
Yeah, exactly.
They couldn't get planning permission for the factory. They couldn't get enough staff of the right staff.
Exactly.
So I think that is so tragic. And now they still have their R&D in this country,
yeah.
but and he's a great promoter of engineering and people into engineering, and somewhere we were the manufacturing base of the world at one time, and what's happened to it all?
Well, what's so tragic? You get all the young people coming to Cheltenham Science Festival, and they're so engaged, they're so excited, and then we lose them.
Yep.
And it's just a monumental waste of talent and investment.
The thing is, we get very hung up on this issue of whether things are manufactured here or not, and there is a bit of an increase in manufacturing at the moment, but with the global economy that we're working to, is that really a problem? Because surely there is such a space for jobs in R&D, research and development, and other areas.
Well, the biggest issue, and I've had personal experience of this, and also with James Dyson. We've become a nation, whether we like it or not, of clipboard holders and box tickers and bureaucrats and health and safety and planning and rules and regulations. We've flattened most of the entrepreneurial spirit that we had in this country. We're no longer the manufacturing base of the world that we used to be. So James Dyson taking his manufacturing overseas is tragic. It's borderline criminal, but he's done it and we can't blame him. And why? Because you've got someone with a clipboard and so, oh, you can't build that here. Yeah, and that's the problem. And I faced exactly the same problem in my own business. We had to fight the local council, for several years just to be able to operate our business in the county. They want to close us down. And what madness is that? There's no encouragement. We actually have set up an office now in central China. It's actually easier to do that than expand in this country because of the bureaucracy with the clipboards and the councillors and the Jobsworths, and it's just madness.
11:20, BBC Radio Gloucestershire. We're going to have a bit of fun next because I mentioned Trevor Bayliss earlier on, who used to work with Vivian. He's going to be joining me after 11:30 to talk about an event he's got taking place tomorrow at the festival, which is called Tomorrow's World Never Comes. Now, you remember watching Tomorrow's World, all these marvellous things, and you thought, that's never going to happen. Or, I hope that happens, and then it never does. You never see it again. So I'm going to ask you the question next. The next big thing waiting to be invented in your terms, in your field, what is it? Will it ever see the light of day? We'll talk about that in a second. It's 11:20.